to our 6th episode of Factoring Polynomials. Today we're going to be talking about the strategy of factoring by grouping. Factoring by grouping tends to be used quite a bit when you have 4 or more terms. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We have x to the third minus 5x squared plus 8x minus 40. You might want to put these 3 terms together because they have a common factor of x, but you really have to focus on all 4 terms. And one of these strategies is group the first 2 terms together. So x to the third minus 5x squared will be grouped together plus 8x minus 40 is grouped together. You always want to make sure that there's a plus or a minus sign. We're always going to want to put a plus sign in here just to make our lives a little bit easier. Then what we do is we look at each group separately. When I see this group here, I now see that there's a common factor of x squared in both these. So when I factor x squared out of x to the third, I'm left with x minus, when I factor out x squared out of 5x squared, I'm left with 5 plus. Now, what's the GCF of 8x minus 40? It is 8. Always remember to take out the greatest common factor. When we do that, we're left with x minus 5. If this group and this group are not the same after you've taken out GCF, then your factoring by grouping either was done incorrectly or it cannot be factored by grouping. But now that we do see that this x minus 5 and x minus 5 are the same groups, we could factor out the group itself as an x 5 out front and then write what's left, which is x squared plus 8. And we end up with a multiplication between here, although we don't have to write it there. That's how we can factor by grouping. Let's take a look at another example. See, 20x to the third plus 12x squared minus 30x minus 18. Now, we might want to immediately jump into grouping, but if you take a closer look, remember, we always want to look for any greatest common factor for not 3 or 2 terms, but all of the terms. And I see that 2 divides into all 4 of those terms. So I'm going to factor that out first. If you don't take out the GCF first, it is still factorable, but you tend to forget about it, and it gets stuck in the middle of some of these factors. So let's take out the GCF. So when we take out a factor of 2 out of 20x to the third, we're left with 10x to the third. Plus, take a 2 out of 12x squared, we're left with 6x squared. Take a 2 out of negative 30x, we're left with negative 15x. And when we divide a 2 out of negative 18, we're left with minus 9. Now again, anytime you take a GCF out, take it and put it all the way down at the end so we don't forget about it. Now focus on what is left. And I always like to rewrite it just to make sure it's nice and neat and nothing else gets involved with it. Now we're down to 4 terms again. So let's group the first 2 together. 10x to the third plus 6x squared. And then some people like to leave the minus on the outside. I'm going to put a plus here and then have negative 15x minus 9. If you decide to leave this minus on the outside, you would then have to remember that this minus 9 would have to become a plus 9. And most people tend to forget about that. So bring the minus on the inside and put a plus between them. You still have 2 groups that are being added together. Now if we look at the GCF of the first group, I see that the GCF is 2x squared. When I factor that out, I'm left with 5x plus 3. Now, here, I see that not only do we have a common factor of 3, but I can factor out this negative as well. Remember, by the time I'm done, I want this second group to turn into this one here. So I gotta have that negative on the outside. So I'm really gonna take out a negative 3, which changes both these signs, and it becomes 5x plus 3. If you ever want to check, just do a quick mental distribute of that negative 3 you threw, and you better be back with this. And again, you notice 2 groups are the same. So we factor out our common group of 5x plus 3, and you write down what's left, the 2x squared minus the 3. And there you have it. We have our factoring by grouping done. But don't forget, oops, what did I forget? This lonely 2. So make sure to take this final answer and put it with the 2. So the final answer is really 2 times 5x plus 3 times the quantity of 2x squared minus 3. And there we have it, the true final answer of the original problem. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this will help you out when you have to factor 4 terms.